Trenton 365 with Jacques Howard. Profiling the businesses, organizations, and people that make Trenton better.
Hello, friend, and welcome to Trenton 365. I'm Jacques Howard, your host. You can send me an email, trenton365show@gmail.com. Follow me on Facebook, Trenton365show, and on Twitter at Trenton365, as well as Instagram. You're listening over WIMG 1300, New Jersey's oldest radio station. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, WIMG 1300. You're watching over WPHY, Channel 25, covering Mercer County, New Jersey, through the Verizon network. In the studio with me, tonight's whole show is nothing about music. It's all about music. I've got some killer guests who are in the studio with me right now, and most of you will have heard of them or heard of their music. And then following up in the second portion, I've got Rich Scannella, who's been on the show before as well, and he's going to be talking about some of the things that he's working on. But without any further ado, I'm so super excited, a little giddy, actually, to have Instant Funk in the house. And for those of you who don't know, you'll be able to see Kim Miller's shirt in a minute. That should stimulate you a little bit. But before we get into it, I want to say, I just want to take a moment to talk about Art All Night 2018 briefly. Most people know my appreciation for art in all forms, my relationship to the organization. We had a tragic event. I just want to tell everyone, please relax, take a moment, decompress, hug and love your loved ones. And wait for the official information to come out. Stop with the gossip. Stop with the media hype. Wait for the official information to come out from artworkstrenton.org. They will supply all the pertinent information. In addition to that, for the organizations that want to help out in some capacity, whether it's volunteers or raising money, again, relax. Contact artworkstrenton.org. and communicate with them directly. Lauren Otis is the executive director. Go that route. Pump your brakes. We don't need a bunch of social media. We don't need a bunch of activists right now. We're all mourning. Just relax. Wait for the official information from R.E.A.C.H. Trenton. And that's it. Thank you. So when I think back to Instant Funk, I'm the youngest of 7. So my brothers and sisters, I got turned on to all kinds of music when I was a kid, from early Parliament, Gil Scott-Heron, all that, you guys, all of that stuff was playing in my house, over the vinyl. And, when you're a kid, you just hear music. Like, you can't articulate that it's, where are these artists from? And it wasn't until I got older and was like, what?
Yeah,
like,
that's right. Right here.
They're here
Right here.
in Trenton? Like,
Right
wow. And then when I started doing radio and TV, it was like, I may actually even have a chance to connect some dots. So without any further ado, I want to welcome Instant Funk, Kim Miller, and Raymond Earl. Thank you both for coming on to the show.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Good evening.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us.
So let's just start with some basic information, and either one of you can jump in and take over about some of how the band was formed, why it was put together, etc.
Well, the band was formed some years ago. I'm about the youngest guy in the group. I'm talking about from back then. Okay. The group was basically formed with my brother Stephen Miller, that has passed on now. But like Raymond and Scotty were actually playing before I was playing. I was that little kid on the step trying to listen to them play, and they was shooing me off, until I got good, and all of a sudden they took me to McDonald's and bought me a Happy Meal and asked me to play, But that's about where it basically started, and we were playing behind a group called the T&Js.
Trenton, New Jersey.
Trenton, New Jersey. A four-man singing group, and they were very, very good. And we used to travel the country, load up the U-Haul, jump in the cars. We just go all over the U.S. of A.
On the Chitlin circuit.
Roll into a town, say, hey, can we play in here tonight for the door? And then we did that for years and years, and then Doc, we
came across a guy by the name of Bunny Sigler, or shall we say he came across us. Bunny worked for Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff at Philadelphia National Records. And Bunny came to one of our rehearsals right here on Broad Street in Trenton. And he liked the band. So we started actually going out on the road with him as his backup band. And that went on for a number of years. And we worked with Tavares and the Chambers Brothers and everybody that was hot back then. So
Pointer Sisters.
That's right. So things were tight because the band was working all the time. So when we finally got back in this neck of the woods, Bunny hired some production assignments for Philadelphia International, and he brought us into the studio. Now, keep in mind, normally at that time, they was only using 3 particular people, and that was Norman Harris, Earl Young, and Ronnie Baker.
And Ron Baker.
Right. Right. They were like the go-to guys, for anything that came out of Philly. So when Bunny brought us in, naturally there was a certain amount of friction, and we more or less had to prove ourselves that we can actually handle it. And thank goodness for us being on the roll all that time, because when we came up on the scene, we were like tighter than anything they ever seen.
That's right.
So we were unknown, and we were super tight, and it was a brand new sound.
And plus, it was around the time that we had did like a lot, like for like the OJ's, Phyllis Hyman, we had played numerous hits for them. But one of the biggest accolades that I could think of was after being in like the studio night after night, we used to hear this young lady singing in the hallway, and we didn't know where it was coming from. And it just so happened that this family, which was the custodial service in the building, one of their daughters could sing. So we found out who she was. Well, actually, T. Life did. And
he was our guitar player at the time.
Right, which was our guitar. Next thing you know, T wrote a song for her. We recorded the song, and then we had Evelyn Champagne Shane. Now, that's all us. I mean, the first album, the second album, that's all instant funk.
So let's stick with that a little bit, because I know a lot of people with music now, the scene has completely changed. I mean, like you said you were on the road, you were playing, showing up to different places, getting the gate from the door. And Trenton even had a lot of places where you could play back then.
Oh, no doubt about it.
So in your eyes, just talk about how you've seen over the decades the change of the live music scene.
Well, I can start from the beginning when this town was a fertile ground for the arts. Not only like music, you had acting, you had dancing, you had everything. The ground was so tight for us to do that in, and the city itself had so many outlets that we could perform, that there were so many nights that you could go out in this town and say, I'm going to go to East Trenton on Clinton Avenue at one of them spots and catch this band. Then an hour later, we're going out here to Ewing to the, what was the name of the place? The Crossing Inn.
Crossing Inn, that's
and
right.
hear this other band or whatever, because the Crossing Inn actually brought in top name acts like James Brown,
that's right.
like Jackie Wilson, and all these things, and it just had the attraction for so many musicians in this town to go to these places and be inspired by these artists, which gave us the fuel to want to do what we do now. And now added to what's going on now is that the town is just so diversitized now that there's no outlets, but there's plenty of talent that is still here. And leading into that, this is why I'm trying to do this thing that I'm doing this weekend with the Battle of the Bands, because the fact that it's not featuring instant funk, but even though we are at the head of it, but we're using like local talent, the bands that haven't gotten a chance to be heard or to be seen, to come back on the scene. I think you and I had a conversation a couple weeks ago, where we're trying to do things in this town again. This is a good catalyst to do it on, with like a lot of, I call them movers and shakers, like the people who can get things done, such as yourself, and like a few others, that if we pull this thing together, that that we could make this town, as Donald Trump says, great again.
Well, no disrespect to that, but I usually try to steer away from the political aspect of things, and we'll leave our current president out of the conversation. Although I would hope that he is a fan of your music. Yes. So as you can tell, I'm a little giddy, but I want to make sure that I cover as much as possible. So with the idea of this Battle of the Bands that's happening this weekend at, it's called, for the locals, we call it the Mercer County Deck Park. It's the park that's above the tunnel off of Lamberton Street. I know we can go on Facebook, and you can look on Facebook for Battle of the Bands information, and you can see all the details there. And because there's going to be some potential inclement weather, please stay connected there and also through the Mercer County Parks Division and find out for sure exactly what's going to happen based upon the weather. I was actually just over on that park yesterday, last night, doing some research, and that's a beautiful space.
Sure is.
Underutilized, in my opinion, well maintained. It's in a great location, and I remember when they first opened the park, they used to have live bands there, and it was always a nice atmosphere. Do you feel as though this Battle of the Bands can be something like a catalyst to get more people out and to start coming to some events and seeing local musicians?
Oh, definitely. This is the idea behind the whole thing. Is that working with Mr. Aaron Watson. He's a great man, and he has great vision for this county, and working along with the city. We're trying to come together to do these things that draw out these entities that are hidden, or either feel that they have no outlet. So to let them know that you have people like myself, like Raymond, and so many others, in this town that have the means to put this talent out there. So yes, this is definitely the catalyst to get this thing going. And when I came up with this, actually my wife actually came up with it, and she says, well, why don't you try to do this? Because it's sitting right here. And no one wants to take the time or put the work in, because it's going to take work. We know it. We know our town the way it is now, to try to get people to come out and to feel good about what they're coming out. Now, the thing that we did last year there, because they asked us to open up the park for them, and there were so many people that came out. But what inspired me so much, Jock, was that the fact that to see the smiles on their faces, and even if it was just for a couple of hours, they forgot about all the troubles that they may be going through. They just had a good time, and like the way they set it up, it was very nice. You could park down in the baseball field. They had a shuttle to bring you back and forth, so when it got dark, you didn't have to worry about walking. It was just well put together. And this is what we're trying to do again this year. But like I said, not trying to put ourselves in the forefront. We're trying to push the talent that is here, the younger talent, or even some of the older talent. You have some of these musicians around here that have so much to offer, but they don't have any way to show themselves. So here's an opportunity. Now, I went and got 4 acts. I called this guy, I called that guy. I got guys with walkers, I got guys with everything, but they can still play. And it's just not going to be a bunch of bands just playing. There's a theme. And the Battle of the Bands was a thing that we used to do when we were kids. It was like bragging rights. We would come in and we would talk junk about one another, and we could back it up. And at the end of the night, there was a prize, there was a trophy, but it was just bragging rights, and everybody supported one another. You know, it wasn't, weren't down on you, because that was the other thing that we used to have. Everybody supported one another, even though we wanted to be better than one another. But if you were somewhere and we weren't playing that night, we were coming to sit there and to cheer you on, you know, and that's how this magic like happened, you know.
I want to stop you right there because we're up on a break, but I've got Raymond, Earl, and Kim Miller, excuse me, of Instant Funk in the studio. We're going to be talking about a bit more about what they're doing now, and we're going to be talking about an event that's coming up this weekend, Battle of the Bands. Stay tuned. You're listening and watching the Trenton 365 show.
The 25th season of Trenton Thunder Baseball is here. Join us for affordable family fun all summer long at Arm & Hammer Park. Tuesday nights are Super Value Tuesdays with $1 hot dogs. Friday nights will feature Pork Roll Fridays as the Thunder become the Thunder Pork Roll. Post-game fireworks follow the game every Thursday and Saturday night throughout the summer. Create a lifetime of memories at the Trenton Thunder. It all starts at TrentonThunder.com.
I'm not much of a dancer. Never have been. Not at weddings, not at concerts, not even when my favorite song is on the radio. But there's something about seeing exactly what I ordered arrive at my facility's door the day after I ordered it. That gets my foot a-tapping. That's why I love Grainger. With 99% of in-stock items shipping the same day they're ordered, they get us what we need when we need it. Which means we keep moving and I keep grooving. Call clickgrainger.com or stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And welcome back to the Trenton 365 show. Tonight's whole show is all about music. Currently, I have Instant Funk in the studio, and I got R.E.A.C.H. Scannella coming up in about 15, 20 minutes or so. But I've been speaking with Raymond, Earl, and Kim Miller about a bit of the history. And folks, it's hard to get all of the information about Instant Funk down in an interview. You can go to the Wikipedia page, but check the other links off of that. There's so much information. And when you start driving down and you start saying, well, wait a minute, they're connected to this one and to this one, and they played here, and they've toured here. You start opening your eyes and realizing the amount of talent that Instant Funk has, and how you help to shape a whole genre of music. I mean, whether or not people can, I think most of all, some people like when they think, okay, Parliament or whatever, but they don't recognize that there's a local connection that was all kind of part of that whole movement, because rarely does anything pop up and it's just one. It's a whole wave, right, which is why it spreads so fast. And Instant Funk is part of that. Right. So can you just talk about that a little bit, and then I want you to make sure that everybody gets a chance to see your shirt, because that's the one that I think most people are going to be like, oh, that's them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you want to take this one?
What was the question again? Because like you said, there's a lot of history there.
Yeah, so let's talk a bit about the history and how it morphed, like the whole scene of funk music and Instant Funk's part in that.
Well, let's talk about Trenton back in the day.
Okay.
The one good thing about Trenton back in the day was its location. We were right in between Philly and New York. So everything that came south or north always came through here first, or second or third. But we always got a piece of the action. And that's why there were so many clubs around, that's why there were so many bands around, that's why there was entertainment all over the place, because we got it from all over the place. And again, there were bands almost like on every corner, you know. And again, like myself, I was exposed to music elementary school. I got my name of Tommy Grice.
Here we go.
You know,
Rest his soul.
There you go. And those that didn't get it from school got it from church. You know, so again, the music was all over the place, but it's no longer taught in a lot of the schools, you know. So we lost that location, and we also lost the fact that there's not that, I don't know, the same volume of traffic that was coming through New York and Philadelphia has decreased a lot, you know, and that decreased the flow of traffic coming through here, you know. So now, whatever happens in this town now, it has to be self-motivated. You know, we can't depend on spillage from the outside to come through here and make it happen. We have to be self-motivated to make it happen ourselves. And that's the one good thing about this Battle of the Band thing that Kim put together, because it's self-motivation. It came from within. It didn't come from the outside. Like, nobody worked at the Apollo and then came through Trenton because they was going through D.C. It wasn't that type of vibe. It actually came from here, you know. And that's that's what we have to be now in order to keep this thing alive. But again, there's music all over the place. It's just the fact that when they took it out of the schools, I think that hurt a lot. And a lot of the kids now that would normally get it from the schools are pretty much in the streets, which is a whole another animal. And a lot of the younger kids, because they don't have that attachment to an instrument, but they still have that drive in the inside. So what they do is they pick up a drum machine, or pick up a sampler, and they try to make it happen the best way they can because they still have that urge there, but there's no instrument, So what's next? You're going to pick up, you're going to do something that's going to they're going to find some kind of way to release that, So drum machines, samplers, putting samples together, DJs putting old rhythms together to make it happen, but it's the same force. The same thing that drove us to really practice all these years drives them to get those records and those drum machines and the computers and sequences, but it's just coming from a different source. So the music is still here, the music is still alive, but the outlet has changed. There's not much of an outlet at all.
Well, let me just iterate on what you're saying. Like he was talking about the music is out of the schools and everything. This is one of the things that's so good that the Conservatory of Music with like the Ivies, that's a good source and everything. But I just wanted to say is see all that we're talking about here is that we have always been the type of people that want to start a trend, not follow a trend, and I know that there are people in this town, such as yourself, I have to keep saying it because you are very good at what you do.
Thank you.
Along with others, like the Ivies, like Mr. Watson, like others, like the mayor, the outgoing mayor and the incoming mayor. There are all kind of things that I had plans for, that I know that if we work together that we can achieve all the goals that everyone has. We can do things like to help the kids. We can do things to help the communities. We can put these good things back into our city again to attract the industry that's needed to clean us up, so to speak, but the mechanism, the ingredients are right here, and as far as the music goes, man, it is here, and it's so strong, just like Barry Gordy did, just like Gamble and Huff and them did. That's what Kim and Raymond are about to do.
Now, I want to jump in there because I'm so glad to hear you both say it, because I'm not a musician. I know what my lane is. I'm connector and promoter and supporter, encourager, media access. That's what I do. But I see this larger vision. I've been telling folks for years, we have everything we need right here to create an environment. Probably most recently people would think about is what Seattle, Washington did with the grunge scene. We have that ability here, and we're actually even more diverse.
That's right.
And we've got this location, like you said, Philly, New York, the mountains, the shore. We have to get, in my opinion, we've got to get beyond our own silos and our own ways of thinking and saying, hey, look, so-and-so wants to be a part of this, let them be a part of it.
Yes.
Because we can all eat.
Amen.
And the more that we have, the more exposure we have. Now you can say the manufacturers now start saying, well, wait a minute. They got all this stuff happening there. We can support all of them and get our message out through the whole scene, whatever they do. And I believe that when we look at the global marketplace, that's what we have to start thinking about. What do we have the ability to do on a much larger scale? And me personally, I'm at that 50-year-old mark, and I'm starting to think about, hey, what's the next 20 plus years look like for me?
Right.
And am I working to leave a legacy so that someone else can learn from what I've done, so that we can continue to progress? And that's what I think is exactly what you're doing, which I think is one of the reasons why we're connecting.
Yeah, well, like I'm saying, Jock, it's like, we have to recognize where our strengths are. Everyone has a talent. everyone, and like speaking of like the music thing, there's room here definitely for the gospel. We're talking about gospel. Heck, I've been a musician at Union Baptist Church for 21 years, and I ain't going nowhere because Spencer will kill me if I leave. But I'm just saying, all elements are here, and you have to recognize your strengths. Just like Raymond and I, like, my strength is production, okay? Raymond is in all this technology stuff that you guys got up here. I know how to turn up the volume, turn it back down. But as far as making it do what it do, that's his expertise. And I leave that alone. He leaves this alone, and we meet up together, and we make it work. So all the elements that we're sitting here talking about, if we take that concept, we can make this happen. It's right. That easy. It's that easy.
So with that, and I always like to put a charge to the listening audience, what do we need to have happen to get more people involved in this process?
Well, I think that the start of it is like this Battle of the Bands, where they can actually physically see something good or see what can be. Like we can sit around and we can talk about it. But, like I said, with this thing here, I reached out maybe about 8 months ago, maybe longer than that, making phone calls. Hey, guys, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. I had calls from guys who have moved away from the city. Heck, I have a guy that's coming in to play on this thing. He lives out in Phoenix, and he's coming back here just to play this. It's not a whole bunch of money, but it's not about the money. What it's about is what we're talking about now, building this thing back up again. Because the other thing is that, like cities like Philadelphia, which most of that stuff has kind of died down. There's not a whole bunch of outlets. I mean, you don't hear a whole bunch of recordings or records or new things coming out of Philly, unless it's the same ones like Patty or I don't even know like who else now.
Well, it's not as much as dying down as a regime change. Again, there are tons of hip hop acts coming out of Philly that are super talented. But the music industry has changed so much. It's not about doing your records no more and getting your records to the mom and pop stores and selling your records and getting paid that way. Now, with the internet, digital downloads, and everything has been commoditized down to 99 cents, a lot of the artists don't have the outlet that we had. So when you do your music, you put it online, whether it's going to go through iTunes, CD Baby, or Google Music, whatever the case may be, put it online, it's worth 99 cents, and now that's about as far as it goes because a lot of cats don't know how to work that internet. And again, the internet, it's a blessing and it's a curse at the same time. It's a blessing because you can sit home and reach everybody on the planet. It's a curse because I don't care how much time or how much money you spend on your music, at the end of the day, it's only worth 99 cents. Now that's a problem. So how can artists make money, if you end up at the 99-cent value? So a lot of the younger acts are not familiar with how it used to be back in the day when they had the mom and pop stores, when you could do a CD, $10, sometimes $15 with 12 and 13 songs on it. So they're not exposed to that. So they're thinking that right now the only way to get your music out is to put it online. Not the case. Not the case at all. What I would do, if I was a young hip-hop act coming up now, I would use the internet strictly for advertisement. My record will be out on such and such a date, and you can buy it exclusively at Walmart or Target. I would set up a brick-and-mortar location, and I would seek out brick-and-mortar radio to actually play my record. And I would still sell it online, but I would sell it for what I wanted to sell it for, not for 99 cents. I would do my own site, and I would just use the net just for advertisement. So here you can buy my record, and this is what it costs, and I may put maybe a snippet or something like that online. But I wouldn't put my whole project online. And a lot of cats download their stuff to iCloud, not realizing that when you do that, they own your property.
I'm going to have to interrupt you there because we're just about at the end of the program. But you touched on something that is exactly what I've been talking about, licensing. We have to think about this as a marketplace.
Agreed.
We have to create a marketplace and the secondary and the tertiary markets off of that. Because if not, all you're doing, like you said, no matter how much you put into it, if you're only selling it that way, it's $1.
Yep.
And more than likely, if one person gets it and can get it off of line, they're going to share it. So you're not even getting the full dollar of it.
Exactly.
That's
So,
correct.
one more pitch for what's happening this Sunday, about Battle of the Bands and how people should reach out to Instant Funk.
Okay, this weekend, the Battle of the Bands, it's plugged for Saturday as of right now. If there's inclement weather, there's going to be a rain date for Sunday. So listen, if you out there like listening, you can play something, you want to have a good time, you want to come on out to the Battle of the Bands. This is the start of something really, really big. And how you can get in touch with Instant Funk, you can reach out to Friends of Instant Funk on Facebook. You can reach out to Instant Funk Official on the like Google site. You can also reach our offices at 609-570-5877 if you're interested in booking Instant Funk, or you just want to ask different musical questions. Feel free to do so.
Great.
What hours are the thing Saturday?
I'm sorry, yes, the hours of the Battle of the Bands are from 4 to 9 p.m.
And this is at the Mercer County Deck Park. And for those of you who are sort of familiar but not really familiar, it's just off of 29 and 129. If you're familiar with the Trenton Thunder baseball stadium, R.E.A.C.H Hammer Park, it's a short distance from there, and it's actually a very scenic walk. And I was told that there will be some shuttle services as well for those of you who don't want to walk that full distance. Well, we'll be back. We'll have you back, and then I will see you on the weekend.
Well, thank you, sir.
You are so welcome.
us.
No, it's my pleasure, man. I'm still a little excited. I can't wait to tell my brothers and my sister about having you guys on the show. So Raymond, Earl, and Kim Miller from Instant Funk have been my guests. You've been listening and watching the Trenton 365 show. Stay tuned. I have Rich Scannella who'll be in next. welcome back to the Trenton 365 Show. You can send me an email, trenton365show@gmail.com. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter as well. Yes, Facebook is Trenton 365 Show. Twitter and Instagram is @Trenton 365. You can always post your events to the Trenton 365 community calendar page on Facebook as well. I got a little confused there. There's so many different pages and things going on in my head. I can't wait for my interns to start, because that's going to free up a great bit amount of my time, and I'll be able to connect with everybody a little bit more. Whenever I get a chance to sit down with Rich, it's always a fun time. I reminisce back to our childhood, riding bikes and playing sports and all the other stuff that teenage boys do growing up in Ewing Township. But it's also awesome now to see where Rich is now as a professional musician, a third-generation musician, feet planted solidly on earth. You'd never know who my guest is if you didn't know. But without any further ado, Rich Scannella, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Jock. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, man. So what I always like to have people give a little summary about who they are and what they've been doing. Why don't you do that again? And let's roll into some of the things that you've been up to, like a little bit of background about you first.
You got it. Well, you just mentioned third-generation musician. My dad and my grandfather both played, and I'm trying to carry on the tradition as well. And it's been going so far so good. I've been playing for 40 years and playing professionally for about 30 years of those 40. And that's sort of what it is. I mean, this is what we do. So whether it's pickup work, whether it's a big tour, or whether it's teaching at the local college, I teach over at Ryder, or teaching private lessons, which I just came from. It really, to me, it's more about the work, and it's about the quality. It's not about, how many people did you play to? I love the fact that I could play a theater, I could play a club, like a small restaurant, and then I can go on tour and play a huge room. So they're all really valid. It's really about the work and trying to keep the quality high. Mm-hmm. So that really takes up most of my time. I mean, kind of juggling those three aspects of the business, and I still record quite a bit. So each month I'm doing that. And I mentioned just a second ago that I finally, I was teaching at Ryder, but I finally finished my credits. So that felt really surreal and pretty crazy. That felt great to finally put that, check that box off. And so that was cool. Mm-hmm. So I can just focus on teaching now instead of teaching and taking classes, which I was kind of bogged down with. But it's been great. It's been great. And I'm really fortunate to do that. I tell students all the time, do it because you love it. Don't do it because you think there's a paycheck in it, or there's some other value that you're going to get out of it, or something extra. Do it if you love it, and you always have that. I've been told that, and it's great. It's got to carry you through the lean times, which is probably going to be more than better times. And if you really love it, keep pushing, you'll persevere, and hopefully, great things will come of it. But it's really cool because I'm starting to see that with my students that are graduating Ryder now. They're going out to the world, doing gigs, trying to do their thing. So it's really cool. Mm-hmm. It's really cool.
And folks, this segment, I'm going to be trying to extract things from him. If you haven't figured it out, Rich is a very humble, modest dude. He's always been this way. So I'm going to have to try to pull this out. And to do that, I'm going to talk about some of the things that we talked about in the past. One of them is that you've always said, when you're a musician, a professional, you take the work. Whether it's a paying gig, a charity gig, or you're playing in front of 5 people, whatever it is, you do it and you put everything you have into it. Where did you learn that from, and how has that helped you?
I learned it directly from my dad, and just a work ethic he had growing up in Trenton at the time. And I think we talked about this too. There was tons and tons of places to play. There was 2 or 3 hotels at the time. I'm talking going way back when my parents were young, and there was tons of work. So you literally, when you joined the union then, you would do a parade, you would do a wedding, you would do a club date, you would do the symphony dates at the War Memorial. So you jumped all over and did this stuff. And it just fostered a work ethic that kind of said, it's not like you just said a second ago, it's not about the money. If you can help somebody and get paid, that's great. If you're just getting paid, you got to pay the bills too. But you take everything because, and the way it's helped me is that by doing all those different things, by diversifying, you're really adding to your repertoire, to your resume. So if, and I tell students that now all the time, I say, if your favorite is rock, or it's jazz, or it's hip hop, or whatever you like, that's great. But if you only do that, your knowledge is going to be pretty limited to just that. So expose yourself to all these things. And the other side of the coin is that while you're on one gig, you probably will get work to another gig. And sometimes it's in the most unlikely places. This was kind of crazy. The other day, I did a drum clinic at Ewing High, which was really surreal to go back there, too. A lot's changed and a lot's the same, but it was really cool. But I was telling a story about a kid I knew that had done a gig on an off night in Philly at kind of it wasn't a dive club, but it was just a basic bar. He ends up playing like it was kind of like a funk gig. And here it was, like one of the producers who was working with John Legend was there. Saw him, ended up hiring him for a session, and here he gets a gold record out of a session with John Legend. So you just never know. And I was trying to impress that upon all the students, like, take anything that comes down, and don't. I guess the best way to say it is limit yourself, especially at a younger age, because you're gonna cut off opportunities that you never know where they might lead, And I really got that from my dad, and it's just helped me in my career because I've been able to do a lot of different things. Yeah.
And let's stick with some of the lot of different things that you've done. I've shared a little bit about tonight through my networks about some of the artists that you've performed for. Why don't you just run down some of the ones that are most people would know about and that are a bit memorable for you?
Yeah. So, starting with my dad's jazz group, that was a great training ground for just all that technique that I would not have known, and I came to it as a teenager, not really being in the jazz, but learned to appreciate it, as an adult. From there, it went to my early rock bands, and then, and like I said, I can't say enough how each gig has built to the next gig. So it went from early rock bands in the local area, Trenton, and then like PA, Philly area, and then that turned into some original work with an artist that was touring, and then a friend of mine also I met in Philly. He was with another artist, and then we got to do like a world tour, a U.S. tour a couple times. We went to Japan, and then so like each one was really a stepping stone to the next gig, until finally I started working with an artist out of the Shore, and we were opening up for another artist that had a rhythm guitar player that was playing with Bon Jovi. That opened up a whole other set of doors and class of people and levels that, again, had I not been doing that gig, I would have never met that guy. So they're all sort of bridges that all build upon, I did the Bon Jovi thing, then I worked with Springsteen, then I worked with Southside, just some pickup gigs, like some benefit shows. Then years later, I got a call for Steven Van Zandt. I already played with Bruce, but so it just is like the strangest thing. I did a tour with Hubert Sumlin from Howlin' Wolf's band. That was like amazing. I got to talk to him and ask him about all those things, Chess Records in Chicago. So that stuff's really important. And we've talked too about the history of all this stuff. Like the history is so vital to me because once all those people are gone, the history's gone. And if we don't have an accurate account, or if someone doesn't write an autobiography or things like that, all that stuff they've done is lost with them, So, and I play with a great blues player at the Shore, Billy Hector, and that's a ton of fun. Billy's a great guy, him and Susan, his wife, and we do blues gigs, and they're amazing. And again, a whole other repertoire I wouldn't normally have done, but because of him, I know a whole bunch, so it's kind of neat.
I'm speaking with R.E.A.C.H. Scannella, professional musician, a drummer. You can check out his website, R.E.A.C.H. Scannella, SCANNELLA, Scannella.com, and there you can go through the laundry list of different artists that he's performed with and for. In addition to that, you can book him to come and do a drum clinic. I know he'd love to sit down and talk to anyone, especially people who are aspiring to be musicians and particularly drummers as well. You're listening and watching the Trenton 365 show. We'll be back after a short break.
We've been fighting the war on drugs for a long time. We answer the phone 24/7, 365 days a year. On a busy night, we answer hundreds of calls. This war on drugs needs our intervention.
Since 2014, Addiction Hope and Helpline has helped people struggling with drugs and alcohol.
When the phone rings, we help people when they need it the most. When we get a caller into treatment, it feels good. It's a blessing.
If you're struggling, drinking, using, and need to get clean, don't suffer alone in silence. Call Addiction Hope and Helpline.
Our people understand, and many are also in recovery. Call for support and strength. You can call for someone who can't or isn't willing. It's an act of love. Together we can help you beat this thing and erase addiction from your vocabulary once and for all.
Call 800-763-9166. 800-763-9166. 800-763-9166.
Welcome back to the Trenton 365 show. In the studio with me now is professional musician, drummer, educator, and recent Rider University graduate, R.E.A.C.H. Scannella. Big up to my man, Rich here. Rich and I have known each other since, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years old or something like that. So almost 40 years. His family has always been extremely warm and pleasant. He's got amazing sisters. His mom and dad are just fantastic as well. God rest his soul on your father as well. I was fortunate enough to sit down and interview him about some of his music history. And we've got that stuff archived, and I'm hoping to, once we get the Arts and Entertainment Hall of Fame popping, that audio will be in there as well. You said something earlier that was super touching, and it was about the importance of the history of all that we have. And I think that our generation, not unlike others, we grew up in a generation where there was so much that was happening. The technology was coming. We went through this period where everybody was making a whole bunch of money, and there were so many cultural changes. And I think when those things happen, it exposes itself through the art. So we grew up, I believe, in a time where we were exposed to so much. Literally, we were listening to, old jazz records, current rock stuff, pop stuff, soul and funk and R&B and all those things. And I really say that our generation, those who grew up in the late 70s through the 80s, we were the ones who were kind of just getting exposed to all these different genres of music. And I think that is continued to grow, and I think there are more people who are doing that now. Like you see in elements of different artists who are blending different things, especially some of the more well-recognized faces. And you were talking about the history and how do we get that information, whether someone writes a biography or an interview. What do you think would be, from a musician's standpoint, what do you think would be the best way to start capturing that kind of content from the people who've done all that work and who are getting up in age?
Man, that's a great question. I think what you just said, interviews, talking to them, the teaching aspect is a great thing, and I've always loved doing it. I get to a lot of stuff in my lessons, just private lessons. We talk quite a bit, but I'm doing it now in the classroom, and I've had a chance to sit in on some classes and actually lecture for some of them at Rider. I had to do one for graduate from when I was graduating. They do a thing called a capstone project, senior project you have to do, and I lectured for that class, which was interesting, pop and rock class. But I think just what you just said, talking about it, interviews, teaching people. When I did the Hubert Sumlin tour with Billy, we toured Canada, and God bless his soul too. With Hubert, he was old and frail at the time, and I said to Billy, Billy, does Hubert like to talk? Because I didn't want to bother him if he didn't. But he goes, he likes to talk. He'll talk. Well, I'm a really early riser, so I'd be at breakfast at 8 o'clock in the morning, and him and his manager would come down. A guy who was driving us. And so I'd say, hey, Hubert, what about Chess Records? And he'd tell a story about Chess or Howlin' Wolf. And he'd talk about touring and playing here. And it was just so enlightening because, you're getting it from a first-hand source. Mm-hmm. And it's I think something that gets a little lost on younger people. When I was a teenager, I didn't get the importance of that, or knowing that a lot of the jazz greats were dying off. Mm-hmm. I got to see Dizzy Gillespie right before he died, and the night I was there, they made a CD. They recorded it live, and I grabbed the CD. But I never saw Miles. I never saw Coltrane was, died years before. But like, again, once those people were gone, and now we're losing all the rock and roll people, and now we're even to the point, at our age, Bowie's gone, Prince is gone, Michael Jackson's gone, Tom Petty's gone. Yeah. It's like, wow, now it's getting, it's changing now, and it's a shame. So I think any way we can do that, whether it's a book, an interview, and the great thing I always tell students too is we didn't have the advantage of YouTube or Google or any of that stuff. You find a lot of stuff online that you would have never, it would have taken you years, that research, to go places or libraries or actually tour the actual place or try to make connections. But I do that now. I'll call people, or I'll call up, somebody, or an old, a drum hero of mine, and go, hey, I don't want lessons like, snare drum rudiments, but can I just sit down and interview and talk? And that, to me, I'll pay for that. Yeah. I would have no problem paying for that, because, again, once that person's gone, you're not going to get that, So someone that played the Fillmore East or the Fillmore West or the Grandie Ballroom in Detroit, all those places, and you're like, the places are gone now, they're disappearing. So it's really a changing landscape, I think, in a lot of ways, and it's a shame. I think, like you said a second ago, we grew up in a time when all these things, you might have had a little bit of a separation. Now I think you have all this crossover, whether it's all different styles of music have crossed over, or even people like Bowie or Prince that recognized decades ago the interaction of fashion and music and art, and could be anything, Andy Warhol knew that, whether it was Basquiat or Warhol or the Velvet Underground. So that whole thing, I think, while it's great nowadays that we have the all that interaction, I think it's also a different landscape in that clubs are disappearing, record companies have disappeared, recording studios have disappeared, albums as we know them, CDs as we know them are gone. So that's a shame. So I think it's harder. I did that gig with Steven Van Zandt, right? He's in the E Street Band. He plays in one of the biggest bands in the world. He tours stadiums when they tour. And here, he was playing a CD. We were doing a show promoting his new CD, and he goes, I don't know who's going to hear it, because nobody buys, unless you're Taylor Swift or Beyonce, who's buying their CD? Ultimately, nobody really sells CDs anymore, or should we say downloads, or what would be considered like a collection or a group of songs. Now it's back to the 50s. You buy that single, or you buy a single or two, and you download it and you got it, and that's it. So it's a really different time, It's a little strange. So that's concerning, but hopefully people will get it, and the younger generation will get it, and this will continue, know.
Now, I know that you don't have a crystal ball, and I know I'm expecting you to live a lot longer, just like I am. Right. So, what do you kind of foresee happening? I mean, like, I know you're teaching, young folks in a college setting, but also in private lessons. What do you kind of feel is happening? What kind of energy are you feeling from your students and regarding music?
That's another really, really great question. I mean, I think the desire is there. I had a student that was graduating 2 years ago, and another professor and I he had taken an interest in her. And I said, you know what? He told me she was writing her own song. So I said, my buddy Scott Randolph has a recording studio. I said, this would be a really great opportunity. She's a young person. She needs some help. She probably is coming out of college with debt. So I said, listen, I went to her and I said, if you want to do some of your songs, come up to my buddy's place. We'll record them. I'll play on them. He'll play on them. I'll produce it. It won't cost you a dime. So she goes, you would do that? That's incredible. So she was really excited about it, and she did. And we got a little 3-song sampler, and I kind of said, here's your demo. Now go out in the world and kind of do your thing. But so I think the desire is definitely there, and there does seem to be an energy with younger people that still want to do it. I think the mechanism of how you have to go about it has changed drastically. Whereas years ago, and maybe still today, if you can get a gig at a club, if you can pack a club, somebody's taking notice. Whether it's the ground level or the grassroots level of the club people, the club owner going, wow, They just put, 500 kids in a club. Okay, now that's a movement. There's got to be something else happening if someone's doing that. The trouble is, I don't think that's happening as much. And I think while the world has become smaller with the internet and all the technology, I think in some ways it's easier, in some ways it's more difficult, because we don't have A&R people walking around going, hey, I'm going to sign your band, or I want to see what you're about. So I think you have to, in my opinion, or things I've done in my life, if an opportunity doesn't exist, create one. Figure out a way. If you can't get over the wall, go under it. If you can't go under it, go around it, go through it, whatever you have to do. So that's probably the biggest reason I don't like all the American Idol and all the TV shows that say win a contest and you're instantaneously famous. So to me, it's about doing the work, and it's not about winning a contest. It's about saying, well, I love it and I'm going to do this regardless. And that's an important point. Winning a contest, you start at the top and you go this way. Starting at the bottom, you learn your craft and you go this way. There's no place to go but up. You start here, there's no place to go but down. So that's my take on a little bit of that. Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. And I'm gonna try to remember that and articulate it when other people start asking about wanting to start by winning a contest and automatically getting that deal and getting all that exposure. Because like you said, there's a lot of learning that when you start at the grassroots level, you get that stuff. You hone those skills, you tighten up, you get that professionalism.
You do. And I'm not knocking anybody that's won a show or been on a show or had enough talent and guts to go up there in front of the whole country and sing a song. But I do think by doing that, you're eliminating some steps that are key, instrumental steps in the craft and in doing what you need to do, to really be that type of artist.
Paying your dues, basically.
That's right.
So we got just a couple minutes left, but I do want to make sure that people understand what you have going on now. So the Rich Scannella Group, you're playing on a consistent, regular basis, local. Can you share about that?
Yeah, sure. So you can check us out. My website you just mentioned, richscannella.com, 2 N's, 2 L's. And we are the last Friday of every month at Freddy's. We are up at Puck in Doylestown, and we also play the Triumph Brewings in both New Hope and Princeton, New Jersey. So New Hope, PA, and over in Princeton. And just last week we played first time out in Fire Island, Long Island, which is cool. We got another show out there on the 27th of July, so we hope that'll be, it was a great club and great people out there, so we hope that'll be a stop for us as well. But I try not to spread myself too thin with the band. I love just doing a handful of shows a month. We do 3 or 4 shows a month at the most. It's great. I still jump out and do other gigs with other people, and of course the Kings of Suburbia with John Bon Jovi is great, and also keeps us playing as well. So it's a great balance of all those different things.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're in town. Last time we tried to connect, I think you were off to Japan or something like that. But it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, Rich.
Thanks,
love to have you back. Just keep me posted on what you're doing, and if I can support in any way, count me in.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
You're welcome. Rich Scannella has been my guest here. Please go to the website, Rich Scannella, SCANNELLA.com, richscannella.com. There you can find out where he's going to be playing and a bit more about his history. You've been listening and watching the Trenton 365 show. We'll see you next week, approximately 8 p.m. You can reach out to me via social media. Just look for Trenton 365. Have a great night.